What if the biggest thing blocking God's blessing in your life isn't the devil, it's not other people, it's not bad luck, and it's not even the prayers you haven't prayed yet? What if it's something you're holding on to? Think about that for a second. You've been praying to God to open a door. You've been doing your best to follow Him. You tried to live right, but it feels like there's a wall between you and the breakthrough you've been asking for. It's like pushing in front of a heavy locked door. You know the answer is on the other side. You've pushed, you've knocked, you've prayed, you've even cried in front of that door, but no matter what you do, it won't budge. And maybe you've told yourself, I just need to be patient. Maybe you've wondered, is God testing you? Maybe you've even wondered if you're doing something wrong. But here's what I want you to consider. Sometimes the reason God isn't moving isn't because you haven't prayed enough. It's not because you're living in sin. It's not even because the time isn't right. Sometimes God will not bless what you refuse to release. And that's not because He's cruel. It's because He loves you too much to build your future on the wrong foundation. There are some things that no matter how much we pray, God will not bless because they would ultimately hurt us, limit us, or pull us away from Him. And sometimes those things are hard to spot because they've been a part of our life for so long, and we don't even notice them anymore. That's why today I want to walk you through 5 things God often asks us to let go of before He can pour out the blessing we've been asking for. And I'm not talking about random habits or minor adjustments. These are deep-rooted, heart-level things that keep us spiritually stuck even when we're doing everything else right. If you've been feeling stuck, if you've been praying for a breakthrough but wondering why God hasn't moved, one of these 5 may be what's holding you back. Let's start with the most common, the most deceptive of them all. Let go of the fear that keeps you spiritually stuck. Fear doesn't always show up as panic. Sometimes it shows up as hesitation, as overthinking, as 1,000 small delays that we convince ourselves are wisdom. But what if the thing you've been calling God's timing is actually fear in disguise? Fear is sneaky. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers, what if it doesn't work? It whispers, what if you fail? It whispers, what will other people think? And without realizing it, fear starts making our decisions for us. We start turning down opportunities, avoiding conversations, and staying in places we know God is calling us out of, simply because fear convinced us that it is safer to stay where we are. Here's the dangerous thing. Fear knows just how to dress like faith. We say, I'm waiting on confirmation when God has already confirmed it. We say, I'm not ready yet, when God has already equipped us. We tell ourselves we're waiting on God, but deep down, we're waiting until the path looks safe. Remember Peter? Picture this moment in the middle of the night. The wind is howling, the waves are crashing against the boat. The disciples are exhausted from fighting the storm, and then they see Jesus walking towards them on the water. At first, they're terrified. They think it's a ghost, but when Jesus says, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid," Peter, bold as ever, calls out, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus says one word, "Come." That's it. No map, no safety plan, no assurance that he won't sink. Peter steps out of the boat, and for a few incredible moments, he's walking on the impossible. But then the wind catches his attention, the waves get loud again, and his focus shifts from Jesus to the danger all around him. And just like that, he starts to sink. That's what fear does. It shifts your focus. It takes your eyes off the one who called you and fixes them on everything that could go wrong. Fear says, what if? Faith says, even if. Fear will quietly steal your calling. The scariest thing about fear isn't that it makes you panic, it's that it makes you wait. And while you wait, life moves on. Opportunities pass, doors close, callings grow cold. Think about it. What if Abraham had let fear keep him in his homeland? What if Esther had stayed silent to protect her own life? What if Mary had said no to the angel because of what people might think? The greatest moves of God in Scripture happened in moments when people chose obedience over safety. So let me ask you, what step have you been avoiding because fear keeps whispering, it's too much? What is your boat, the place that feels safer than the risk of obedience? Letting go of fear doesn't mean you stop feeling afraid. It means fear no longer gets the final say. Right now, wherever you are, pray this with me. Lord, Fear will not be my shepherd. I choose to follow you, even if my knees are shaking, even if I don't have all the details, even if it costs me. My trust is in you and not in my comfort. Let go of the desire to control everything. You ever tell God, I trust you, but then keep making backup plans just in case he doesn't come through the way you want? Control feels like security. Control gives us the illusion of safety. We think if we can plan enough, prepare enough, manage enough, we can protect ourselves from disappointment. And yes, wisdom and planning have their place, but there's a line. When your trust in your own plan is bigger than your trust in God's plan, that's not faith anymore. Here's the truth. You can't steer and surrender at the same time. Control keeps one hand on the wheel even after we've prayed for God to take over. It says, God, I'll follow you, as long as you're going in my direction. Remember Abraham? God promised Abraham a son. At first, Abraham believed, but as the years passed, the promise started to feel impossible. So he and Sarah decided to help God out. Sarah offered her servant, Hagar. Ishmael was born, but Ishmael wasn't the son God had promised. God still kept his word. Isaac came in God's timing, but the shortcut created pain and division that lasted for generations. God's timing isn't punishment, it's precision. You're praying for the right relationship, but you're forcing things with someone you know isn't God's best for you. You're asking for financial provision, but you keep manipulating situations to get ahead instead of waiting for God's leading. You're asking for direction, but you keep moving forward without waiting for his answer. Control feels safe, but it's exhausting, and it will keep you from the very thing you're trying to secure. Ask yourself, what am I gripping so tightly that God can't place something new in my hands? Let go of the timeline you thought your life would follow. You had a plan, a neat, beautiful, perfectly timed plan. By this age, you'd be married. By this year, you'd have a job. By now, you'd be living in the house, raising the family, doing all the things you dreamed of. But the years passed and the plan didn't happen, and now you feel like you're behind, like the window closed, like God forgot your address and the clock. We rarely say it out loud, but deep down we attach our peace to our schedule. We think, I'll feel secure when these things happen by these dates. And when they don't, disappointment quietly sets in. Not just disappointment in life, disappointment in God. Remember Lazarus? In John 11, Lazarus was sick. Mary and Martha sent word to Jesus, the one you love is sick. They had seen him heal strangers. Surely he'd come immediately for a friend. But Jesus didn't rush. He stayed where he was for 2 more days. By the time he'd arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. From their perspective, he was too late. Mary said, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Martha said the same thing. Both sisters believed the miracle was possible, but only on their timeline. Jesus had a bigger plan. He wasn't just there to heal Lazarus, he was there to raise him from the dead. Sometimes delay is what makes the miracle possible. Delay is not denial. Sometimes it's divine preparation. You're not behind. The Bible was full of late starters. Moses was 80 when God called him to lead Israel out of Egypt. Sarah gave birth to Isaac long after hope had failed. Paul didn't begin his ministry until after a radical detour that made it look like complete derailment. God's purpose for you isn't bound by your age, your season, or your missed milestones. I know someone who dreamed of working in ministry from the time they were young. They applied for position after position and nothing happened. Years went by. They ended up working a temporary job they didn't love. Then one day, a crisis hit their workplace and they discovered God had been preparing them all along. The skills they learned in that wasted season became exactly what was needed for a ministry position that opened up later, a role they would never have been ready for without the delay. Ask yourself, have I attached my peace to my schedule? Have I confused not yet with never? Let go of the bitterness you've been carrying for years. Some wounds don't bleed anymore, but they've never healed either. They live under the surface, shaping how you trust, how you love, how you pray. Bitterness doesn't always look like rage. Sometimes it looks like cold distance. Sometimes it looks like numbness, but however it looks, it poisons the well from which all of your relationships drink. Remember Joseph? Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, sold into slavery, lied about, forgotten in prison. If anyone had the right to stay bitter, it was him. But he finally faced his brothers years later. Now, as the second most powerful man in Egypt, he didn't punish them. He wept, and he forgave. Not because they deserved it, but because he had already released the offense long before they showed up again. Bitterness promises protection, but it delivers prison. Bitterness tells God, you can move in my life, but don't touch this wound. But God heals by touching what hurts, and as long as you're guarding the wound from Him, it cannot heal. A woman I know hadn't spoken to her sisters in over a decade. They both claimed to have moved on, but any time the other's name came up, you could see the walls go up in their eyes. Then one day, God convicted her during prayer. You've been asking for peace, but you've been refusing to let go of the grudge. It took time, it took humility, but when she forgave, something shifted, not just in the relationship, but in her heart. What comes to mind when I talk about forgiveness? A friend, a family member, a coworker, maybe even God Himself, because you don't understand why He allowed something to happen. Letting go of the identity you built without God. We all wear masks, some to hide the pain, some to prove we're strong, but wear a mask long enough and you'll forget what your real face looks like. The weight of pretending. Maybe you're the strong one in your family, maybe you're the achiever at work, maybe you're the peacemaker who never lets anyone see you upset. Those identities might have helped you survive for a season, but they can't help you thrive in your calling. Remember Saul? Saul looked the part of the king, tall, commanding, impressive, but insecurity ruled his decisions and his reign collapsed. Peter, on the other hand, was impulsive, unrefined, and often wrong, but Jesus called him the Rock, not because of who Peter was at that moment, but because of who he would become once he stopped relying on his own strength. God can't bless the version of you He did not create. There was a man that spent 20 years building a career that looked impressive to everyone around him, but the truth, he hated it. He was miserable. Still, he kept going because people expected him to be the successful one. It wasn't until God stripped that identity away that he finally discovered his true calling, something far more fulfilling than the image he had been protecting. Ask yourself, have I been living as the person God created me to be, or as the person others expect me to be? God can only fill what you're willing to empty. Let's go back to the 5 things we've talked about: fear, control, timeline, bitterness, false identity. Which one is God asking you to let go of today? Letting go is not losing, it's making room. The breakthrough you've been waiting for might not be waiting on heaven, it might be waiting on your surrender. Imagine waking up tomorrow, free from fear, no longer gripping control, in peace with God's timing, light because you've dropped bitterness, confident in the identity He gave you. That's not just a nice idea, that's the life Jesus died to give you. The door is open, the blessing is ready. The only question is, will your hands be empty enough to receive it? If this message touched your spirit, share that in the comments below. And remember to subscribe if you want to hear more messages like this. This is the King's Ministries.